Welcome back to the Chiefly Football Podcast. I am the underqualified host, Kinloch, and joining me virtually from the heart of Chiefs Kingdom is Dave. Post-heart attack, and nothing is stopping you from hitting the gym or making podcasts. So how are you doing this evening, Dave?
It's still good to be on this side of the dirt, that's for sure. So yeah, this is exciting. It's the draft is a week away. So just, yeah, this is good to be alive.
Yeah. Hopefully it wasn't the Chiefs ending to the season that kind of set you on that trajectory. But
it was probably a delayed reaction of 3 months or so.
I mean, they played a lot of close games there at the end of the season, so I think it makes sense if there was just some stress built up. And but well, I'm glad you're here. Everyone is glad you're here. So, all right. Well, I'm really excited, especially to talk about the 2022-2023 Chiefs season, and I'm also really excited that this is season 3 of our Chiefly Football Podcast. So. Been doing this a while, and just excited to start another season. Hopefully we'll be able to get Staten and
that would be Marcus.
There you go.
I know it's been a long off season.
Yeah, so hopefully we can get Staten and Marcus back on and get some more voices in here. And but our listeners will have to settle for us for now. But we got a lot of awesome things to talk about. Before we get started, make sure you guys follow us on social media: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram at Chiefly Football. And if you're joining us on YouTube, please subscribe, like, and share. Also, we want to hear from you guys. That's one of our favorite things, is being able to interact with our followers and listeners. And we just love to talk about a lot of the trending topics in Chiefs Kingdom. And lately it's been a lot of draft related things. And so sometimes we'll post conversations or, different questions on social media just to hear you guys' thoughts and opinions. And in previous seasons, we've had listeners that have wanted to talk to us on the show. So we've had guests on the podcast. And so if you're interested, you can reach out to us on social media. But Dave, I wanted to know how you're feeling, a couple months after the Chiefs lost to the Bengals in the AFC Championship game. Really a heartbreaker. Felt like we had the game in the bag after the first half, and then just complete meltdown by the offense, it felt like. And just kind of what are your thoughts a couple months later on how the Chiefs season ended?
Yeah, I think most of us just trying to forget it. I think one of the things that made that loss is, and it wasn't one I feel that it went back to old Chiefs Kingdom. Just the way that the Chiefs had blown opportunities before and created that heartbreak until the Chiefs won the Super Bowl and ended that 50-year drought. But that was reminiscent of very Chiefly stuff, especially coming off of the unbelievable win the week before, and just the high, just the momentum, just the recognition that, with this offense and with Mahomes, he could truly overcome anything. And just as you said, to blow a halftime lead, which, I think some people would put it on the defense. I think as I look back, and I'm really curious to see how the next season unfolds, it was just I felt it was real uncharacteristic Mahomes in the second half. I don't know if he was doing the same things and they just weren't working. But seeing some videos and some analysis of plays that were there that he didn't make, it just I just don't know who that was in the second half. I know at the time, a lot of the boards were blowing up that it was fixed.
Yeah.
But evidently the game before wasn't fixed. And the playoff run where we overcame the deficit to the Texans and the Titans, obviously those weren't fixed. So I'm not going to go down that road. I don't buy any of that. But I was shocked that Mahomes didn't come through in a big moment and Burrows did. Not used to seeing that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Ever since Mahomes started, he's just been, I mean, he was incredible that MVP season in 2018 all year, and we just had a bad defense. And so we could kind of blame it on them. But in a lot of the biggest games, he's always played his best. And in the biggest moments against the Bills, I mean, he was incredible. And so, yeah, I think it was just, we hadn't really seen that before where he needs to make plays. The team needs him to make plays. And they were given every opportunity throughout the second half. They won the coin toss in overtime. There were so many chances where it was like, all right, now the Chiefs are going to win. Now they're going to put it away. Like they were gift wrapped the game like 3 times in the last 4 minutes of that game.
Yeah.
And so just the fact that they couldn't close multiple times and that it all went down to Mahomes just not being who we were used to seeing. So, so does it change the way you think of Mahomes moving forward, or do you think it was just happened to be one bad stretch of like a half hour game time?
Right. Yeah, I don't know. It would be one thing if it was like early in the season where they were just off, uncharacteristic errors,
Which happened, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But it wasn't just that Mahomes wasn't making plays, it was Burrow's making plays. Where he's in the grasp and he's going to get sacked so that we could, finish off a drive there and hold him, and he breaks away from it and completes a pass. And Mahomes is running around and people are open and he makes wrong decisions or makes no decision. I hope that his track record of success is a better indicator than 1 30-minute time frame. I think going forward, and I think we've talked about it previously, is I'm curious to see if Mahomes matures to that quarterback. And I'm sure we'll talk about as we come into the draft, as we talk about maybe some of the personnel changes, is he going to become the quarterback that elevates his receivers? In Chiefs Kingdom, we complain a lot about outside of Tyreek, there's a lot of concerns about the rest of the receiving core. And, being Brady fans and Manning fans, or even just watching them, their receiving cores changed throughout those players' careers, and it didn't matter. It didn't matter whether it was Welker or Edelman. It didn't matter whether it was Marvin Harrison or whoever it was coming through Indianapolis. And that's what I want to see with Mahomes, is that it's not that we have to have great receivers. It's that he's so smart. He knows what to do with the ball. I'm really curious about that maturation.
Yeah. And we're going to get into that later, just with the amount of picks that the Chiefs have in the draft this year, where their roster stands, and how important it is to build a team through the draft for reasons of cost, right? It's just cheaper for rookies on deals. And so Mahomes, if he wants to get paid as much as he is going to get paid, he needs to be able to work with receivers who aren't number one receivers in the NFL, like Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce. And so we'll get to that a little bit later, but I think the first step would probably just be do a quick recap of free agency so far. I'll just go ahead and list a couple of the players that we lost. On the defensive side of the ball, Charvarius Ward, he was one of our starting corners, so that's a hole the Chiefs haven't been able to fill yet. Dan Sorensen, Ben Niemann and Anthony Hitchens. Those are three players on the defensive side of the ball that I'm sure many fans are happy to see that they're gone. And, it's clear that, from watching the games last year and even a couple of years now, that you could just tell that they were becoming liabilities on the defensive side of the ball. And the fact that Veach saw that and decided not to bring them back is a good step. So now it's just about how do we fill those roles. Then on the offensive side of the ball, we kind of joked last year that the Chiefs didn't have a number 2 receiver, which, it was true, but that they had like 3 or 4 number 3s. Well, now 2 of those number 3s are gone, Byron Pringle and Demarcus Robinson. And so looking a little thin at that point in the wide receiver room. And then I think I'll throw Melvin Ingram in there. He was only there with us for about half a season, but played a really big role in how the defense played down the stretch. And he's still available as a free agent. So maybe that's something that we can talk about, is potentially bringing him back to fill a pass rushing role. And then really probably the big headline of the offseason was the trade of Tyreek Hill to the Miami Dolphins. As part of that trade, let's see. So we got the first round pick from the Dolphins, second round pick, fourth round pick, and then a 4th and a 6th in next year's draft. And then Tyreek Hill went on to sign the biggest wide receiver deal ever. And it actually makes him the highest paid player that's not a quarterback in the NFL right now, which is just insane to me. Like, that's higher than any pass rushers, offensive tackles, the positions that are usually the highest paid in the NFL besides the quarterback. So I think that's just crazy. I don't want to get off on a tangent, but like him and Devontae Adams being paid way more than any other positions right now. It's interesting. I think it might be an interesting trend to see that wide receivers are going to start making more money than other positions that for the last couple of decades have been valued more. So I don't know if there's anything deep there, but I just thought it was interesting that, for one, that the Dolphins just mortgaged their future, when I don't think it really makes them any bigger title contenders, because there's still question marks around Tua. But no question, right now the wide receivers are controlling the market and leveraging that. I just find it super interesting, and you talked about it, is a great pass rusher can impact the game, no question about it, and a great quarterback impacts the game. A great receiver only impacts the game, or their impact, I should say, is contingent upon the quarterback. And you just mentioned the two receivers who are Adams, who was widely considered the top receiver. He got the big payday, which reset the market for Tyreek, as the Chiefs were in negotiations with Tyreek, and once he saw that, his value in his mind increased substantially as well. And we went and signed with Miami. But now you have Carr and you have Tua throwing to those receivers. I'm not seeing there's not going to be the same results there. There's just not. It's the quarterback. Ultimately, the quarterback makes the receiver. Jerry Rice, the greatest receiver, he had Montana and Young. He had 2 Hall of Fame quarterbacks throwing to him. Well, you just don't, very few, even Moss, as good as he was, he went and had one of his best seasons when he had Brady throwing to him. And Brady had his best,
one of his best seasons is because he had an elite receiver. But you're just, they're not going to change the game that substantially. We had Tyreek and we came up short, and we had Tyreek and Mahomes and Kelsey. Yeah, it's been good for them. I'm glad they made bucks, and I'm glad we got a haul for him, and that will strengthen our team ongoing, because at the end of the day, yeah, Tyreek was going to be gone at some point, and so now this is an opportunity for Mahomes to play and make things happen with different athletes, and we see who he is.
Yeah, and it was such a great haul for the Chiefs, and it really sets up their offseason and how they can kind of jumpstart another, let's say, a reload. Just, we briefly mentioned it earlier with how important it is to build your team with draft picks. And a lot of times when star players get traded, especially a year before they're about to get paid, the team loses a lot of their leverage, because teams know that they're probably getting rid of them. And so they don't have to offer as much. They just know it's more of an inevitability. So the fact that the Chiefs were able to make a deal for him to get as much as they did, we kind of hear Bill Belichick talk about it, or do it. He always tends to get rid of stars early rather than late, because he wants to get as much value for them as they can, especially when they know that they're not going to keep them long term. So I thought that was a great move for the Chiefs to sell while Tyreek's value was at its highest, and to get the haul that they got. And special thank you to the New York Jets, who, as a second team, really helped increase the bidding. I kind of wanted Tyreek to go to the Jets. For some reason, I'm kind of cheering for the Jets in some weird way, but
and their quarterback can throw. So.
Yeah, Tyreek's skill set probably would have been used more effectively with the Jets, but
But his numbers and the success are going to be probably equal.
Yeah, and I think he'll just be used different than the way he was used here, especially at least with Mahomes. Now, they could use him the way that the Chiefs used him with Alex Smith, because I think Alex Smith has a very similar skill set to Tua, where they might use him on shorter routes, more screens, a lot of jet sweeps out of the backfield, just to get the ball in his hands more often and let him make plays. But
and you're paying that kind of money for that.
Yeah, for a gadget receiver.
Yeah, that is right. They want to turn him into McCole Hardman.
Right. Yeah. But that's a great segue, because McCole Hardman now becomes the most experienced wide receiver in the Chiefs offense coming into this season. The Chiefs did go out and sign Juju Smith-Schuster, former receiver for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and I don't remember his first name, but Valdez-Scantling, MBS, coming over from the Packers. What was it? Marquez Valdez-Scantling. Yeah, I'm going to keep sticking with MBS. That's just easier. So he came over from the Packers, and hopefully, I think when we signed Juju Smith-Schuster, we still had Tyreek Hill, and I was really excited about that, because in my opinion, Juju is much better as a number 2. In the 2 years after Antonio Brown left the Steelers, when he was asked to be the number 1, he just did not perform well. And part of that can definitely be attributed to Ben Roethlisberger and his arm falling off. But I think just with his skill set, and when defenses are focusing their coverages on him, he's just not good enough. The good news is we still have Travis Kelce, and he'll really be, I think, the number 1 receiver in this offense. So maybe that'll free up Juju a little bit more to work with not as much pressure on him. And I think defenses will feel the most threatened by Kelce, and they already have, even with a lot of the times, even with Hill. A lot of teams were just more scared of Kelce, but yeah, it'll just be curious to see how that dynamic works. And then Marquez Valdez-Scantling, he's considered more of like a deep threat wide receiver. He's not quick and shifty like Tyreek, but he's got that top end speed that can rival Tyreek Hill's. I think just my only, I don't want to say concern, but I don't want people to get too excited just because he is fast. That he spent a few years in Green Bay with Aaron Rodgers and was still considered like an average receiver. And most of his yardage was from like deep bombs, which it'll be fun to see with Mahomes. But I don't think he's not going to replace Tyreek Hill in most of the ways that Tyreek was used. And he's just, I think, a kind of limited receiver. So he's not going to be a number one receiver by any means. And I think he'll just be a better version of Demarcus Robinson.
Which would have been great last year.
Yeah.
So we have a number 2 and a 3. And
yeah, well, we're just really hoping that McCall Hardman steps up. I mean, steps up to a number 2. I don't think we're expecting him to fill Tyreek Hill's void at all. But I think he showed some promise after last season, and we can get into that more in the off season when we get closer to seeing how the depth chart lines up and everything. But I think so far going into the draft, it's a solid, well, there's good things to like about it. But I would still say that it could use some improvement as well. And then just a couple other players that the Chiefs brought in. Ronald Jones, the third from Tampa Bay. And he was a second round pick out of USC, and just didn't mesh well with the coaching staff in Tampa Bay, and ended up getting beat out there by Leonard Fournette. So, so he brings some good things to the Chiefs, and with the running backs, how they are now with CEH, 2 good young running backs to pair with each other. I still think that the Chiefs are missing kind of that more electric playmaker that can turn a short run into a 20-yard gain. But again, that's something that the Chiefs could address this offseason. And then the other, I would probably say the second biggest move that the Chiefs made was letting Tyrann Mathieu go. And he was considered the leader of the defense for the 3 years that he was here. Spags brought him in specifically to kind of help him set up a culture and just bring a tenacity and a mindset to the defense that the defense definitely lacked under Bob Sutton. And so I thought we saw that for the first couple of years. But the Chiefs decided to part ways with Mathieu this year. They brought in Justin Reed, a safety from the Texans, which I really liked that move, because he's still young. He's versatile, like Tyrann Mathieu. He can play high free safety. He can play in the box. He can play outside corner. He can play in the slot. So, Spags loves, especially in his defensive backs, to be able to move them around, because that just gives him so many more options to create pressures and to not be exploited in mismatches by the offense. So I really like that move, bringing him in. But it was pretty clear that when they made that signing pretty early in the offseason, that they probably weren't going to be bringing back Tyrann Mathieu. So just what are your overall thoughts on the Chiefs moving on from Tyrann Mathieu? He did so many things for the Chiefs. And like I said, he was kind of brought in to be that leader on the defense. So, is there some concern that with him gone, that, that leadership and that mentality kind of goes with him?
Yeah, it's interesting to see who that voice on the defensive side in the locker room is without him there. So I don't know enough about the personalities of some of those other players, especially on the back end of the defense. Uh, Frank Clark will still be a voice in there. I don't know that Chris Jones is is that type of leader, is the real intense, motivational style. So, and not only that, and I know we don't mind, I know that Sorensen had fallen out of favor. Niemann was probably never in favor, but you're also taking away a lot of experience in Spags' defense as well. So not only a leadership void possibly, but also just that experience. It's Reed is not going to be able to stand back there. I don't know. I anticipate and be able to direct traffic the way Mathieu did. But it's also interesting, and we've talked about it before. Is I think there were some question marks about Tyrann's. You mentioned the success that he had the first couple of seasons, and watching tape or listening to insight from others, it seemed like as the season progressed and he didn't have that long-term contract that he had been lobbying for, his production wasn't as impactful. And I think you had mentioned it before in a conversation that we had is, maybe as the season wore on, you noted that there were several times when he was really fired up and yelling at players on the sideline. And you have to question, were they starting to tune him out because they were questioning his production on the field? Was he making some business decisions on plays where he could have gone in and made a play or made a tackle and pulled up or stripped, went for a strip, or not made the same play that he might have made a year or two before when his contract was looking a little different. So I thought that was interesting as you brought that up. And over that period of time, I think as much as the Chiefs wanted him for who he was, maybe his value started to diminish as a culmination. I think he became a disgruntled employee is kind of what I think, is that when he didn't get that contract, he started to get disengaged. And if any of you have worked with somebody who gets disengaged, they might show up and they might still put forth an effort, but it's not the same intensity, and there's not the same commitment, and there's not the same sense of urgency. And once you've disengaged, it's real hard to re-engage. Very few people are able to re-engage. Usually they end up leaving that role and going to work for somebody else. And I think that's what happened with Tyrann. And it's left a leadership void there.
Yeah. So are you concerned? So are you concerned, or do you think that the Chiefs made this decision thinking that there was leadership there that could fill the void?
Well, I think they believe that there is leadership there. Maybe it's Willie Gay, or maybe it's Nick Bolton. Maybe their youthful energy is enough, or maybe they're anticipating, hey, we're going to bring somebody in, maybe not at safety, but like Ingram, like you had mentioned before, when they brought him in, it was the whole package that he provided. It was not only his play, but his presence. The season before when we brought in Suggs, it was the same type of thing. He wasn't as impactful on the field, obviously, as Ingram, but his commitment was visible for the rest of the team to see. So maybe we'll get that player, but I don't think we're going to get that Tyrann, Mathieu. I don't know. He's kind of rare. He, like you said, he came in to change the culture and the tone on the defense. And without him, I don't think it is this. Without him being who he was supposed to be, I don't think that the defense looks at that tone, the same. So,
Yeah. I think that's just a storyline that maybe I just missed the conversations about that, but I think that's a really important part of how the defense runs. Just, I mean, not even during the game, but in practices, and that leadership, the person who's always pushing people and holding others accountable, making sure that everybody is putting themselves in the position to help the team and make everybody else successful. I just wonder if that was talked about enough and on the coverage when Mathieu left, and just kind of the void that might potentially leave. And I love what you brought up with, the experience. I mean, Spags is really going to have to rely on Nick Bolton and hope that the year that he had under his belt learning the defense was enough, because all those people that left, Mathieu, Sorensen, Niemann, Hitchens, they were all in charge of making sure players were in the positions on defense. They were in charge of making the calls. And with all of them leaving at the same time, it's, you can question, if that transition is going to go well with less experienced players filling those voids. I'm guessing, Bolton obviously is going to be taking on a big part of that role. Thornhill is going to have to step up in the secondary as the leader back there now. So especially early on in the season, it's possible that we'll see a lot of miscommunications and, a learning curve there.
And assuming that the draft is going to fill some of what we recognize as needs, but you're bringing in young, inexperienced players. And if you don't have that leadership on the field, that makes it more difficult for those guys to get in the right position. So I think is kind of what you're alluding to, and you kind of just noted it is there's going to be some concerns about growing pains early on with the defense this season, isn't there? And it's going to result in a lot of fans turning and wanting to fire Spags once again.
Yeah.
Because they have no patience for that, right? They all wanted all of these guys jettisoned, but they're not going to be happy when there's this, as you said, the curve is coming, and they're going to wonder why you didn't replace them with somebody better who could already acclimate and impact the game.
Right. Yeah. And it's the double-edged sword that comes with building your team with youth and getting rid of, the older experienced players who just don't have the physical skill set anymore. So it's just something that the fans are going to have to be more patient with, especially early in the season.
They won't.
No, they don't.
I mean, I shouldn't say that. The smart ones will get it, but the majority of fans who just look at the result, play by play, well, yeah, they'll just want heads rolling every week.
Yeah.
At some point, they're going to turn on Mahomes.
So hopefully throughout the season, we can bring some reason to, to Chiefs Kingdom. And there are a lot of, Chiefs Kingdom is awesome. So there's a lot of great fans out there and a lot of knowledgeable fans too. It's just,
and those are the ones we want to be hearing from. Those are, the ones that bring that insight. That's, like you mentioned, is the comments. I love getting reading insight from others, and those who are thoughtful and, see a big picture is, and you can tell that they have a real grasp of not only the game, but the organization and what goes into, building the team, not just what they see on Sunday. So another shout out to get, we want to hear from you all.